Hey, this is Austin Weber with Weber Bracketology, where every day is Selection Sunday, and we are just 4 days away from the actual Selection Sunday. And conference tournaments, many have already finished. The big ones are starting to start up, get into the first, second round, and there have been some decent changes to the bracket since Saturday. There's going to be small changes every day, probably, especially with the bubble, how close these teams are. But let's get into what we have right now. So, on the one line, Kansas has taken over the number one overall seed, even after losing to Texas. With Alabama's loss, it's pretty obvious that Kansas deserves that number one overall seed. They have 15 quad one wins right now, and they can pick up two or three more going into the tournament with this Big 12. So I think they're solidly going to be the number one overall seed. But then Alabama, Houston, Purdue are the other three. On the two line, UCLA is really close to the taking a one seed. If they were to win the Pac-12, and Purdue doesn't win the Big Ten, or Purdue loses early in the tournament, I think UCLA could get that last number one seed. But for right now, it's going to be Purdue. And then Texas, Baylor, and Arizona are the other twos. Three line, not too different. UConn is up there as Tennessee drops to a four. But it's still pretty close between those two. Marquette is actually pretty close to the two line with Baylor, so there's a chance Marquette could move up there, given how the Big East and Big 12 tournaments end up. The rest of the fours, Indiana, Xavier, Virginia, still the same. The five line, San Diego State, Miami, St. Mary's are still there. Iowa State has moved up with their win against Kansas State, so I think they're pretty solidly on the five line. With the sixes, Creighton, TCU, Michigan State, Kentucky. The 6, 7, 8s are all pretty close. So that's really an area that'll be really heavily affected by the conference tournaments. Michigan State, they have 6 quad one wins, 6 quad two wins, so they have a pretty good resume. I think they deserve that sixth line. Kentucky could be higher. But they have those 2 quad 3 and 1 quad 4 losses, which kind of holds them back. The 7 line, Northwestern, they don't really have a lot of bad wins, but they do have 5 quad 2 wins, which is just kind of a lot. So they're sitting there at the 7 line. Texas A&M, they beat Alabama, and they could be higher, but 2 quad 4 losses kind of holds them back at the 7 seed. Duke and Missouri has moved up to the 7 line. On the 8 line, Illinois is there. Iowa and Maryland have dropped down there after their losses. And West Virginia, who did they beat? Maybe they wait, no. Iowa State beat Baylor. West Virginia beat Kansas State. So West Virginia has moved up to the 8 line. Just with the way the bubble, the 9, 10s, and 11s, so many of them are losing. They've all really been trying to play themselves out of the tournament, it seems, with the way they've all been losing. But West Virginia, even with those 13 losses, 14 is the most they can have, and a team with 14 or 15 losses, that doesn't mean that they can't get like an 8 seed. It's happened before, and with the strength of West Virginia's schedule and their metrics, I believe they're probably at an 8 or 9 right now, but I think they're at an 8. On the 9 line, Arkansas, Florida Atlantic are there. Boise State's still there. And then Auburn has moved up after their win against Tennessee. Like I said, all these teams in the 9, 10, 11 range, they've just been losing, but Auburn picked up a good win against Tennessee, so they were able to move up to the 9 seed. 10 line, we have Mississippi State, Providence, USC has moved up there, and Memphis drops just a little bit because of the loss to Houston. But really, they were my lowest 9 seed, and I believe they're my highest 10 seed right now. So that really isn't much of a drop, even though it's a whole seed line. Then the last 2 buys are going to be NC State and Penn State. With all these losses, they have worked themselves, I think, pretty handily into the field. The last 4 in, Nevada and Pittsburgh. Nevada is really close. Nevada and Pittsburgh they played themselves. They were like 9 seeds recently, but they've kind of been losing games that they shouldn't be, so they fall into an 11. The last 4 in, and then Rutgers is still clinging, and then Utah State is in as the last team in. They only have 1 quad 1 win. They have some questionable losses, but their net's 21, and with the way other teams are around them, and the fact that I think they do have some a lot of quality quad 2 non-conference wins against teams like Oral Roberts and such. I think they deserve the last spot in there, especially the way other teams have been playing themselves out. And then with the auto bids, nothing crazy. Oral Roberts, Drake, Charleston, they're all locked in. I think they're all going to be 12 seeds pretty handily. Who else is like Louisiana? I have as a 14. Kennesaw State, they're a 14. They're locked in. Furman as well. UNC Asheville a 15. And then on the 16, Northern Kentucky, Farley Dickinson, and Southeast Missouri. I think they're all solid. Obviously they're all solidly, and they won their auto bids. But those are probably the lines they're going to be at. There is some teams playing conference tournaments tonight. Like who is it? Lafayette. And then whoever's playing Montana State, they have, I think, Northern Arizona. They have horrible records. They're like 33% for their win percentage. So some of these 16 seeds could be moving up just because really bad teams win their conference. But we're going to go down to the last four byes are Mississippi State, Providence, NC State, Penn State. We talked about the last four in. My first four out right now, Wisconsin. I don't know if Wisconsin can really get in at this point. Arizona State, they have a shot, depending on who they beat in the Pac-12 tournament. Oklahoma State, I think, given the strength of their conference and their conference tournament, I think they have a great shot of getting in. Just picking up a win or two might be enough just because of the strength of who those teams they beat would be. North Carolina's got to, really, I think from North Carolina down, those are the teams that have to win their conference tournament. Other than that, the other teams just need teams to lose above them, and they need to pick up some quality wins. But yeah, so it's going to change a bit over the next few days. I'll try to get out a bracket every day as things change, but we are just 4 days away from Selection Sunday. So if you enjoyed, please subscribe here and visit WeberBracketology.com to see things like the S-curve and more. But enjoy these last couple days of the season before March Madness begins.